Good afternoon, my friends. It's lovely to have you back. So, today I'm going to dissect the Thronebreaker reveal trailers and information that we've gotten. We've got a lot of it and a lot of different sources, screenshots, gameplay footage, trailers. And I'll try my best to collate it all and just discuss what we see as we go through. Pretty exciting. It looks great. This is all subject to change, though. I think some things more than others, and I'll talk about that as we go along. But let's get into the dissection now. We've got a lot to go through, and we'll see how long the video is. Okay, so the first thing we see with Thronebreaker is that there are difficulty settings. We did know this, but it seems to be story mode, where you can just skip the battles if you wish, or they find them too difficult, or normal mode where you can't do that and you have to fight the battles in order to do it. Okay, so regarding storyline, I'm not going to go into it too much. You can watch the trailers, which I'll put in the video description below. However, the year is 1267, which I believe is during the first Northern War between Northern Realms and Nilfgaard. Okay, and according to this, they seem to have already taken Sintra, because that gets a blob of red on it already. So, here we go. So here we can see the northern leaders having a chat. We've got King Demoven the Third, we've got Henselt, we've got Queen Meve, and is that Foltest? I think it might be. So the next thing I want to talk about is Biting Frost here. Now, this applies a hazard to an enemy row and deals 2 damage to the lowest unit on turn start. We actually saw this leaked yesterday, and it had a 4-turn timer on it. And this just really comes to show that we've got to remind ourselves with this particular Thronebreaker information, none of the abilities are necessarily what they are comparatively in multiplayer. This looks like it's, quite a decent card because it will just last for the entire game if they don't clear it. In multiplayer, you have to balance it. So be aware, any abilities in this game are not necessarily representative of multiplayer. So I won't be commenting on them very much as we go forward. So here we can see the dialogue options. This is how the characters talk to each other. It's looks slightly different from the mini campaign we saw a long time ago, but very similar in some respects. You've got the coat of arms. We see some characters, Cadwell and Queen Meve, as well as another one. Here we can see dialogue choices and how this might impact the game later on. You get to choose, because you're playing as the role of Queen Meve, you get to choose how to approach certain situations, and this is one example of many that of ways you can do this. So this is what it looks like when you're exploring, when you're playing as Queen Meve, moving around the world, interacting with people, getting quests, and interacting with objects and getting into battles and stuff. It looks similar to the mini campaign that got cancelled when you were playing as Geralt. A lot smoother though. So we can see the movement of the game is where you click on the floor and the character will run there. However, you can also click and hold in a very Diablo-esque movement scheme. I love these foreground birds. They look really, really nice. So in the top right corner, we can see we've got some resources: gold, wood, and recruits. And you'll also find items and companions which will support you in battle, probably presented as Gwent cards most of the time. So we can talk to people, we can look at banners, and we can interact with objects and stuff. And this is probably where we'll find sub-quests and stuff like that. So here's an example of a sub-quest where we have found a treasure map, or we've been given one, and we need to go to the location and receive the goods, and we don't know what they are yet. So we can see he's interacting with things within the environment. They have a hand icon above them, and this is giving him gold, it's giving him wood, and the banner there, he'll soon use, and that'll give him recruits. So this is a way of getting these resources. You have to explore and interact with things to get these resources, as well as other quests and stuff like that. Now, not all of the resources and all these points of interest are actually labeled on the map, so they do want you to go out and explore and click on things that maybe don't have icons above them to try and get stuff. And here's a good example of this is a very tutorial beginner example of how you interact with things within the world using your money or your wood or your recruits. And here she has 2 options to clear this path. This is obviously the tutorial, so they're very basic, but you can understand how later on it could become quite a task. You might have to spend tens of thousands of gold in Mahakam or something and do stuff. So this is a nice way of giving you multiple options, but also making you want to actually look for resources in order to get to different places and find those hidden places. And it'd be really nice if there are some really nice hidden areas. So here's an example of a hidden event. She's just been ambushed by some bandits. And these are actually the cards that we saw unreleased a while ago, in fact. So this is going to be a Gwent battle that's coming up, the Road's Edge. To indicate it's a battle, you get this really cool looking thing. Okay, so this is telling us that it's a story battle, and it's also using a custom deck. Okay, so so there might be some puzzles, puzzle battle, and also fixed deck, where the puzzle gives you a set deck. This is things that we probably already know, but this is nice that it lets you know this before the battle begins. It gives you a little bit of information about the battle, and also it shows you the opponent's leader card, giving you an idea of what you're facing. A really nice card back of Lyria, which looks pretty damn cool. We're not actually getting Queen Meve as in multiplayer, apparently. I find it hard to believe they won't bring her in eventually, though. So here we have the battlefield. Now, this is going into Homecoming territory. I could do a whole video about what this shows about Homecoming, but it clearly shows two halves of a battlefield. We've got our half and the opponent half. I believe this is the same battlefield. I love this Mud River. That is so cool. Mud River. We've only got a couple of cards, not many at all. Definitely not 30 card deck. But this looks like a Thronebreaker specific board. And we'll see later how the top half of the board and the bottom half of the board are interchangeable depending on what you do in it. So later on, Queen Meve will fight a monster, and she'll have her Lyrian board, and then the top half of the board will be monster related. So I like that you can those two switch. So we see a lot of information. We've got Queen Meve as our leader card. We've got the bandit as the opponent's leader card. We've got one charge of Queen Meve, and he's got 0 charges, and we've both got 3 cards. We've got some unique cards down here. Okay, the opponent is going to play a card, and it actually appears up here. Now, this might just be a Thronebreaker related thing and not a Homecoming related thing, but I think this would actually be really nice for Homecoming. When they play a card, it pops up here so you can see what it does, and you know, option to turn that off possibly, but really like that sort of history thing coming up there. And that's probably what this tab is. It's probably the history tab, which makes sense. But he's played a 3 strength bronze strays slinger. Move 1 unit to the row opposite this unit and damage by 1. Again, abilities for Thronebreaker is very Thronebreaker related. Don't really want to get into that too much because they're specific. So we can see our leaders go into sort of idle and unidle animations as well. We can see at the bottom here, this particular card, which we'll get onto later, does have armor. So armor still exists within the game. Some units have armor. Armor absorbs a certain amount of damage dealt to a unit. That was very handy. Thank you. So here we can see a new ability. Now, whilst the actual cards themselves would probably be different in multiplayer Homecoming, the ability might actually be something which transfers over. And here we can see the Loyal ability. And we'll see it in a moment. The Scythemen have a Loyal ability. This means that their other abilities are activated every time you use your leader. Or at least it says Meve's ability anyway. That might be an ability which carries over. We can also see armor down there. And we're going to have a look at Queen Meve's ability now. So Meve has the ability to boost an ally by 4 and give it 1 armor, has a 3 cooldown, and it will also trigger the Loyal ability of the Scytheman. So here we can see Meve, Bastard Sword, and she is a Lyrian leader, I suppose, and she's got that gem with a 6 in it. Now we saw the Bandit's gem, and that was 0. Now, Queen Meve's ability is obviously on a cooldown of 3, so it's not that 6 does not mean that she has 6 charges of her leader ability. So it must mean that you've got 6 mulligans, because we know the mulligans are tied to the leaders and they can balance that. So this must mean you have 6 mulligans to use with this leader, and the bandit has 0. Now, Queen Meve's ability here looks a little different to what it did when it was on the board a second ago, because this has the added thing on it where it says trigger allies with Loyal. Previously, I thought Loyal was whenever you play your leader, activate Loyal abilities. But this seems to indicate it might be specific to Queen Meve. And we know Meve is not coming over to Homecoming, so that might mean that Loyal might not come over. But then again, it might. So, another added element of Thronebreaker, the single-player campaign, is the ability to pitch a tent. Now, this looks like it's specific in a specific spot. which means that either you'll come back to this spot often or you'll pitch it in multiple locations and it kind of carries over. I did want to mention that now on the left hand side we've got several different icons. We had the history tab while we were playing, and that looks like the just like maybe the settings tab. This one looks like the inventory. We did say that it did say that we could pick up items and companions, and I thought they might be Gwent cards, but this might indicate that there's other things that you can pick up, like notes. In fact, this might be like the compendium that you'll be able to see later, and also the tent button, which we're going to see now. Okay, so this is the camp system. So we've got 4 particular places we can go. We're going to have a look at the workshop first because that's what he goes to. So the workshop here is like a tech tree for your buildings, where you can upgrade your buildings, which will give you access to newer things. He's going to upgrade the royal tent, which is where your main objectives and official correspondence are. Okay, your map and stuff. So he's going to do that. It's going to cost him some resources, 1,000 gold and 50 wood. So it's definitely worthwhile exploring. So switching to Polish, he goes a little bit more in depth into the tech tree. So first of all, we see this particular upgrade we have here. And this allows him to increase the number of pieces of gear that can be equipped to Meve up to 3. And I think we get to see what those actual pieces of gear are later on. So I'll comment upon that when we get to see it again. So the next upgrade we get to see is here, which looks like a watchtower. And this one is, it places the locations of treasures and resources on the map of the region. So you build this in a region and you get a lot of stuff on the map so you can go and find everything. Looks relatively cheap for the cost. So our next upgrade is the ability to gain about 25 to 75 gold after every battle. That's what this particular upgrade does. Next up, we've got the ability to purchase this upgrade to allow us to buy new abilities, new cards for our particular deck. So this is something you might want to invest in as you go through the game to improve your cards. This next upgrade gives you 1 recruit after each battle. So very much like the gold one in that respect, but this time it gives you recruits instead. Again, more access to different types of units as well as artifacts. And this particular upgrade increases the speed of moving around the map by 5%. So we've also got the royal tent. This is where we can look at the letters, the reports, the maps. We got the treasure map earlier, if you remember. Some keys and card fragments. I love the idea of those card fragments. They're like little, you have to go around collecting them, and then when you get them all, you can craft one big card to put into your main deck for the rest of the story. That sounds really cool. We've also got the mess tent and the command tent. We're going to go into the mess tent. This is where you can actually talk to people. They may give you hints or secrets, and you might get little quests from them as well. We're going to talk to Reynard here. And again, this is another chance to have dialogue options and choices which might impact the game later on in life. Okay, we have also got a new icon, which is the map icon. So we actually got access to some UI from talking to Reynard there. And this allows us to actually look at the full-fledged map for Thronebreaker. So here we can see an extended map, more icons. He's probably got that watchtower that we saw and has explored quite a bit, because we've got, I love the way they're using things that are similar to The Witcher. Like that's obviously a waypoint where you can teleport around the map, which is just, it's automatically in our house. So I looked at that when I said it. In our brain, that's probably a tent that he's pitched. Maybe, I think you can access that via the icons on the side, but that's a puzzle encounter. That's an icon to pick up some resources. We don't quite know what that is. That's probably a quest. So I think they're pretty self-explanatory, and that's perfect. That's what we want. You need that kind of stuff. So here in the top left, we've got this icon, and we're going to learn about an army's morale now. So morale is this little icon up here, and it actually affects the cards. So in the minute we have neutral morale, and that has no impact on the cards, but you can get low morale where the strength of all your cards gets lowered by 1, or high morale where the strength of all your cards is increased by 1, and it's shown by the icon up there. Now this little icon here is a shrine, okay, and you can go to a shrine to increase your morale, and morale is probably lowered and heightened just through making dialogue choices as it describes here. So you might have to spend resources to keep people feeling good, but then obviously that might hinder you down the line, and it's a lot of choices that might hinder the game. But it does seem to be a system where if you're struggling with one particular encounter, you can go to a wayside shrine, make an offering, which seems to increase your morale for one fight only. It says here, after victorious battles, morale returns to neutral. So you must always keep an eye on it. So it seems like you go through the game as neutral. It's probably balanced for neutral. But if you're struggling with a particular fight, then go to a wayside shrine, make it a little bit easier by giving all your strength, all your units one extra strength. So the diamond is neutral, and the triangle is high morale. And we'll see how that works. I imagine it's just +1 boost on all your units. So here we've got a labelled fight we're going to get into with some ghouls. Again, this is not a story fight, apparently. It doesn't say story fight. It is a custom deck. So this is probably the deck you can choose. Now, the leader card, Osrel here, has no mulligans, apparently, and is a monster leader card. Seems to be silver. What is that? Does Thronebreaker still have silver cards? I mean, I imagine not. Right, we can see some things here. So we're playing against monsters, and as you can tell, we've got half of the Lyria board. We can tell that because of the notice board. And we've got half a monster board. We can tell that because this is different to what it was. We had the mud thing before. And we've actually seen the monster board already. We've got the ghoul leader there, which is nice. So it seems like we're going to get through quite a lot of leaders. I doubt that leader will come through over to multiplayer, which is, you know, a bit of a shame because they've made it now. But we have something on the board already. And this is the Lyrian trophy. It's a banner, it's a unique type of card, and you can have only one in the deck at a time. Now, this might be related to Thronebreaker specifically. The banner will also automatically appear on the battlefield at the beginning of the match. But we can see some things on it, some icons, and these icons are really juicy. So here we can see the players hovered over the Lyria trophy. It has permanent resilience, and whenever Meve is played, reduce her turn limit by 1. So this is probably just reduces the cooldown, as we can see. She's got a cooldown of 3 turns before she can reuse her ability. But this is such a juicy card because first thing, we've got that icon down there, and that must be the resilience icon. Okay, and permanent resilience and resilience, probably the same thing. It'll just disappear the icon or whatever, remove the icon. And we've seen several icons now. We've seen the mutagen icon, which is for immune. We saw the rook, which is for resilience, and we've also seen another one, which the summoning sickness icon as well. So we've started to see several icons and how they're displayed on the card to give us information while we're looking at it, which is really important. Knowing that something is immune just by looking at the board is really important. Knowing something is resilient when just looking at the board is also really important. So I love that. Now also we have this icon here, and this is the icon, guys. This is such a super important icon because this is a card and we can see that it's unique. It's different, right? It hasn't got strength and it's not a spell. So I really think that is the artifact card because the Holy Grail there would make sense as an artifact. So I think this is an artifact card, and it actually is a card which is different. It's not a debate. It's not an item card like we saw with those other item cards. But this is an artifact card, and it's unique. And we can interpolate a couple of things from this. First of all, if we go back a little bit, if we go back here now. Here it tells us that the rows are covered in fog, and this is just some of the row effects that we'll encounter. And the fog, it's very subtle. It's hard to see that fog's even there, but it is. So fog is on the board on both of our rows, and so we should be taking 2 damage per turn. What's noticed is that artifacts, this card here, doesn't have any strength, and also doesn't get damaged by fog. So it seems to be that you can't actually damage this card. It seems to be like an undamageable card, but it's an artifact which you place onto the board, or it's automatically placed onto the board for you in this case, and it does certain things. So this is like a passive card that you place onto the board. Now, there's probably some counterplay to artifacts, but damaging them doesn't seem to be one. Destroy an artifact card somewhere. Oh wait, we actually saw a card that does that. It was Iris. She destroys artifacts. So it seems to be that artifacts are undamageable. They do take up a space on a row. They're like passive abilities or abilities that you trigger or something. Probably a multitude of things. They probably broaden it to the most extent they can. But also, in order to destroy them, you seem to need abilities which actually say that you destroy them. This is all on the preposition that this is actually an artifact card, but I'm pretty certain it is. which is pretty cool. And we can look at the fog here, and like I said earlier, it's very subtle. It looks pretty nice. I think it really fits in with this dark theme. It's not, it doesn't look like a square going across the board. And we can see our foggy boy. Death Wish, summon a copy of this unit from your deck. 4 strength, and when it dies, it summons another copy, and that would be thinning because you'll only have 2 copies in the deck, normally anyway, if this is an ability in Thronebreaker. What's interesting is it's about to be our turn, and the camera like zooms back a bit so you can see all your cards better. So they seem to have this automatic zoom in, zoom out. You can move the camera yourself, but they do seem to have an automatic zoom in, zoom out, so the board is actually more focused when it's not your turn. We just saw it again. It's more focused when it's not your turn, but when it is your turn, it kind of pulls back to focus it back onto your hand. I believe we don't lose any sight of the opponent's cards, but they may get a bit smaller while you're looking at your hand. There we go, your turn, yeah. So interesting, I like that. So the board's actually a little bit bigger than it looks like, but we automatically zoom in and out, and we can actually move the camera ourselves, which is really nice. So here we can see Meve Bastard Sword is about to be played. She has a 3-turn cooldown, and we also have the Lyria trophy, which should reduce her turn limit by 1. So let's have a look what that does. She's boosting it by 4, adds 1 armor, and then that boosts by 5 because it's a loyal unit. The Lyria trophy doesn't seem to have actually reduced her timer there. She's still got a 3-turn cooldown. So that's an interesting thing. So here we've got the round over screen, and these cards are going to go to the graveyard now. That was a lot faster than it was previously, which is really nice. Right, the weather has gone. That did go a bit abruptly. I think that's probably one thing they need to be thinking about, how quickly that fog just disappears. Maybe that's something that can be improved. They draw in 3 cards each, and we've got that resilience, and it's got the resilience icon just again. There, it got replaced back on. So we can see the Ferocious Algul here is about to destroy an enemy with the highest power and then boost all allies by this unit's power. And it's got 1 charge, and that was insane. That was insane. But this is a story match, and this one is particularly here to show you that sometimes it's okay to lose a round to win the war. So here we can see that the opponent has just played the Rot Fiend, and whenever another unit is destroyed, damage a random enemy by 1. That is the same ability as we saw in Homecoming, so it lends some credit to other cards being similar to Homecoming. It lends some credit to that. We still wouldn't be able to say for any other card in existence, but that one is the same as what we've seen so far, at least. So here we can see the card has an order ability, and it has to be activated manually, but it also has the summoning sickness, as you can see by the icon down here, which means he has to wait till the next turn unless he has zeal, which he doesn't. Right, during your turn you can activate any number of abilities before or after you play a card. I think that was already established, but some people were doubting it. It does seem to be the case. So he's about to play Reynard onto the melee row, and his ability is actually a very interesting one. I really think it's quite interesting, and this proves to be quite good for the Homecoming. This is a good thing. Give 1 charge to all units with depleted order. This is a power play. While it's not necessarily in Homecoming at all, this card probably won't even be there. It does show good things ready for Homecoming, and this is a nice ability. It means that you give 1 charge to all your orders. So orders that are depleted, you can reuse them. And we did hear that Northern Realms are going to have some sort of order sort of archetype. So that makes me really excited, because that's an actual interesting ability. While it is still quite simplistic, the potential is quite big on that one, I think, which is really nice. So that's making me excited for Homecoming a little bit more. And again, we've just won this round. Meve is doing her little pirouette, and the ghoul is slain, and victory goes to us. So here we can see the deck builder, and oh boy, did we get a lot of really good stuff here. Now, I can't read this, and I didn't translate this, but we can see so much. So this thing up here, these buns, these batches, these baps, these crusty loaves are provisions. Okay, that's the icon. They're the nice. I like that. But also, in this particular Thronebreaker standalone, we get 125 provisions. At least he does right now, to build your deck. Okay, and we can see the provision cost of cards down here. That costs 9 to place that unit in. That costs 6. That costs 6. That costs 4. 15. You're mad? Okay, that's a lot of provisions, right? It does seem like this artifact card here has no provisions, and this card here, I believe, is actually the equipment, as you can see by that icon here and that icon here. So I think that's probably banner, equipment, and units. I think that's some filters there. And so you can have one banner and they don't cost provisions, and you can have some equipment for your leader which don't cost provisions either. We don't know if these are going to be in Homecoming. We haven't heard anything about banners and equipment in Homecoming, but that sounds pretty cool. It means you could tailor your leader to your liking, but that might not be good for a multiplayer because then you won't be able to tell unless you maybe hover over. I don't know. Anyway, we're getting off topic there. But that's those, and they're pretty cool. So I like that. And so we've talked about the provisions. You need a minimum of 25 cards in this Thronebreaker standalone. Now, I do think that maybe provision-wise, you probably get upgrades to increase the max amount of provisions you can use, so you can buy more expensive cards and put them in your deck as like a clear progression, possibly. Let's keep moving. So here we can see there are no silver cards. We saw like the leader card looked silver, but here it shows us that there's only gold and bronze, although that does have a silver there, which is unusual. Now, this particular thing here it costs no provisions, and this is the zoomed in thing, which is really nice. But it doesn't mention artifact on it. This particular line here it has an order ability to move this unit next to an allied order. So you can move this around, and I'm not sure what the purpose of that is, but it doesn't mention anything about equipment here. There's a swallow potion. Some really nice premiums looking here. So there's a Reynard Odo premium, which is new. We've never seen that before. We've also got a Cadwell premium, which we've never seen before, which is pretty damn cool. It does seem to be that gold, bronze, common, it is balanced based on their abilities. So this one is 3 strength, has an ability, I'm sure. It's quite cheap. This one's 5 strength, 15. Insane, but its ability must be also quite insane. However, this is just for Thronebreaker, not necessarily Homecoming, but I think we can draw a lot from this, personally. So I was right. You can click on the tent tab anywhere you want and go back to this, so it's not restricted to being in a certain place. He's got his, looks like quests and reports and maps here. These are treasure maps, and so he's trying to look for that. So what we're going to see here is that he has actually got 3 different types of Meave that he can choose from. Now, we saw the first one, which is to boost a unit by 4 and add 1 armor. Also triggers loyal abilities. This one, you target an enemy, and all enemies with the same strength take 4 damage, and it has a cooldown of 5, this particular one. So here we can see he uses this Queen Meave, and this is probably the 3rd Queen Meave that we didn't get to look at earlier. Its ability is an order. Choose a card from your deck and put it on the top. Boost it by 3 and has a cooldown of 2. So it's kind of like a mini Stefan Skellen, but you can use it a lot. So really nice ability there, and we can see her about to use it. There she uses her ability. This is looking into the deck screen. Might be very similar to what a graveyard screen would look like as well. It seems to be able to put units as well. As well as specials, It's cool that he's got different types of leaders, and, you can decide and tailor it to you, which is really nice. Okay, so here we have another battle and a lot of stuff going on here. We've got a new weather effect going on, okay, which looks unique. It's definitely not frost, fog, or rain, Skellige Storm, so maybe it's Ragnarok, where only it puts it on the opponent's side of the board, and it looks like this, possibly, which is pretty cool. Now, we're going to see this Wagenberg. I don't know what his ability is, but he will target this row. I think the player made a mistake. And he targeted this row and did something like 3 damage to every unit on the row, which is a bit crazy. So we can see this card here has the immune tag, and he will get damage, but that's because it's the row effect and not actually a targeted one, which is in line with what we know. This unit, being an artifact, doesn't get damage, which is also what we've established earlier. It can't be removed apart from things that say destroy artifact. This card has an icon up here, which is a marked symbol. I think we get to see that later. And this one also has an eye, which is clearly that it's a spying unit. He played it on this side, which is interesting. So we move forward. He does the 3 damage, and we're absolutely right. That doesn't take any damage because it can't be hit. And that does take 3 because it was a row effect. Here we have a new type of screen. We've got what looks to be a puzzle type of game because of the way the opponent has already passed and you're still playing. So this is a demonstration of a puzzle game. We can see in his hand he's got an artifact card, which is pretty interesting. Okay, guys, so there's still quite a bit more to talk about in different sources, but this is taking a dramatic amount of time. So part 2, I think, for that. I hope you enjoyed part 1. I really enjoyed going through it. There's some nice things that I discovered by re-looking at it, and hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you again very soon. Take care, everybody.